and they don't really like me. Cause I can fuck your bitch and fuck your mom and auntie.
Cartoons are not for children. Okay, for like 40 years they were almost exclusively for kids, but they weren't originally created for them. Some of the most successful and iconic animations of the past 30 years were specifically designed for adults. And aside from a few iconic Disney creations, it's safe to say cartoons are more enjoyable when they are constructed for older audiences. Today I'm going to take you all on a nostalgia trip, covering adult cartoons from their inception in the 1920s all the way to the crowning point of Adult Swim, the mecca of adult animations. Drink water. In the 1920s, Hollywood was booming, producing an average of 800 feature films per year. There were some cartoons, but they were still in early development. The few cartoons that were made in the 20s were shown at cinemas before a feature film. They were essentially short films with no dialogue, just music and sound effects. It was also in the 1920s where there was a big push for harsher censorship in films and theatrical performances. The Supreme Court ruled in 1915 that free speech did not extend into motion pictures. A lot of films, such as the ones performed at the New York stage, had mature content, nudity, cursing, and adult subject matter. It was like the Wild West with no rules and regulations. In 1927, there was a censorship committee formed by Will Hayes, a Republican politician, to propose some do's and don'ts in the film industry. It took a while for these suggestions to become an actual enforced code, known as Hayes Code, and in the meantime, cartoons would take advantage of the minimal regulations.
Shit said no white slavery, but regular slavery is okay.
This was known as the pre-code era. Betty Boop. She was a caricature of the 1930s flapper, a woman with more love to give than knowledge to share, typically depicted as being innocent yet scandalous. She had a baby face but the body of a grown woman. Many of these early productions were heavily sexualizing Betty and other animated women. Some of these straight up glamorizing.
Do you like your job? Well, I think if I were you, I'd go somewhere. You better come out with me tonight. Have some dinner.
They pretty much depicted every way possible a woman's dress could get removed from her body. Betty exploded in popularity. However, with the enforcement of Hayes Code in 1934, the animation studio was required to button up Betty's image. She went from being a free spirit flapper to a housewife/career girl who wore fuller dresses. Her curls got straightened out, her earrings got smaller, and she slowly became more mature. She even smelled different. Okay, we don't know how she smelled, but I think we can all agree smelling good is feeling good, which is why Scentbird is a necessary service for you. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription. 55% off to make your first month just
niggas back then was really beating they
By
dick to Betty Boop
Betty
hentai.
Boop was over, but would be aired on television progressively throughout the next 60 years, stamping her in cartoon history. Hayes Code seemed to have uninspired animators to make cartoons for adults, because most of their humor at the time revolved around themes that were now banned by the code, so creators had to try and entertain the adult audiences inconspicuously through their children's shows. Animated shorts hit new strides in the 30s, with the creation of Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Snow White. These animations were good enough to captivate audiences for extended periods of time. In the 40s, there was Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry, Bambi. They were definitely designed for children, but parents could watch and be entertained. Storylines were basic, most of the humor came from silly faces, characters getting hurt, and just basic tropes that would make kids laugh. In 1949, the first animated television series was launched, called Crusader Rabbit. Gumby in the 50s was a groundbreaking new animation style, but most of the 50s was dominated by the same kid-friendly animations from the 40s. Television sales were exploding in popularity, but animated series were not regularly programmed yet. You had experimental 5-minute episodes programmed by various stations at different times. Popeye being one of the more famous ones, and was pretty much adult-targeted, leaning into relatable humor. The best kind. That was a joke. Focused on the working class man and relating to his struggles. Like, wow, the pipe broke on this sink. Oh my god, I hate when that happens. There was a massive shift in the 60s. The birth of Hanna-Barbera animations. Basically every American household has a TV now. You had the Flintstones, the Jetsons, Pink Panther, Scooby-Doo, Spider-Man, Hulk, so many more. Regularly scheduled cartoons enjoyed by millions so you don't have to go to the cinema to see animation. There was more variety, better writing.
Hanna-Barbera had shit on lock.
The working class man and the modern family, but the colors were brighter, the scenes and animation were more imaginative. imaginative. TVs in general were more creative and fun. Most of these cartoons were still family-friendly, designed for children, yet really enjoyable for adults to watch as well. The 70s was the birth of Nickelodeon. However, the mid-70s to mid-80s would be the weakest era for new cartoons. The 70s were carried by shows that were started in the 60s. Critics, whoever they are, say the golden age of animation ended in 1972. Obviously, everyone born in the 70s or later would say that's cap, but many of the most critically acclaimed, financially successful, and culturally significant animated films and cartoons were released from the 20s to the early 70s. However, they had significantly less variety and less competition, so it's a lot easier for those cartoons to have a bigger impact. These old cartoons were considered to be more lifelike, emotionally relatable, and contained valuable lessons. But a lot of adults may argue that cartoons are not a place where they want to learn life lessons, and rather escape into a creative and complex alternate reality, not to remind them how much their boring life is just like this boring cartoon. To no surprise, cartoon ratings were plummeting, resulting in budget cuts, and then the release of low-budget animations that didn't have a lasting impact. The 1980s, you had the birth of the Disney Channel. Shows like The Smurfs, Thomas the Tank Engine, and Alvin and the Chipmunks were hits for children, but the late 80s felt like cartoons were catering to their teenage and adult audiences a lot more. At this point, for almost 40 years, cartoons were perceived to be for children and almost exclusively designed for children. Like, it started out exclusively for adults, then immediately did a 180 for kids, and was slowly building towards being designed for adults again. Teens were waking up in the morning, eating cereal, watching tunes, and chilling on the couch after school, watching tunes. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, RoboCop. These were designed more so for teenagers and opened up a lot more opportunities for advanced animation, more action, and more advanced storylines that could be understood, not just ha-ha bonk on the head humor. There were a plethora of new shows being premiered only to be discontinued after a season or so. The scenes were more imaginative and immersive. Unfortunately, a lot of the shows didn't stick or become as culturally long-lasting as shows made in the 90s. But in 1989, something big happened. A cartoon written and designed for adults without being racist or overly sexual. The Simpsons. The Simpsons is not written for kids, it's written for adults. Was said by Matt Groening, who created the show. Matt was a visionary. He knew that the mainstream audience wanted and needed an adult-oriented cartoon show, so he made it happen. Homer Simpson and Marge Simpson are married with 3 children, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie. They live in the middle America town of Springfield. It was an animated sitcom without the laugh track, leaning into a classic sitcom storyline, the average American family. Breakfast in the morning, conflict in the day,
a lot of cartoons
resolution at night. It was
probably
as
wouldn't
basic as
exist
it gets
without
in
the
terms of
Simpsons.
understanding the general plot.
Like
Just
Family
watch the
Guy,
first
American
episode
Dad, and all
you
that
have
other
almost all the
corny ass
background
shit.
information needed to watch the next 32 seasons. Although it was basic in nature, every episode was a new day and the creative possibilities were endless. Homer would overreact, get in ridiculous situations, and handle them how basically nobody would handle them.
How about that rain check for last night?
Nah! Nah! Don't look at me! Freak!
The animation style stood out from the rest immediately. They were all yellow, they all had extremely unique features like huge mouths and weird-shaped heads. The show was carried by the extensive array of wacky side characters, all that have memorable characteristics and are voiced by unique and talented actors. The most successful primetime cartoon in history at this point. The Simpsons Season 1 in 1990 averaged a whopping 27 million viewers per episode. The Simpsons proved that a cartoon designed just for adults can not only be successful, but be the most successful. Liquid Television. Produced by MTV and released in 1991, it was a compilation of animated shorts by independent artists. They were pushing the boundaries of animation, and all of it was catered to adults. It was like this little secret network within a network that only a few knew about, which sounds familiar. This was the birth of Beavis and Butthead, which was a crude, humored show about 2 dumbasses who couldn't do anything right.
We tricked him. He's probably like, there's nobody here.
And were obsessed with the idea of getting laid.
Ladies beware.
Sure, it only lasted a few seasons, but it is culturally iconic. At the time, this was groundbreaking in terms of what comedy and adult cartoons could be.
Primarily children watch cartoons, but adults watch cartoons too. In fact, in the evening, on the average evening, more adults are tuned to the Cartoon Network than are tuned to CNN.
That was Ted Turner, creator of the iconic Cartoon Network. Ted was a visionary who knew how badly the world needed cartoons. His strategy started with buying the rights to every cartoon ever made. Sounds like an overstatement, but let me break it down. Ted founded CNN, the very first 24-hour news network in 1980. 1 year later, he purchased MGM Studios and United Artists for $1.5 billion, in which he sold a portion to cut down on the debt. He remained with MGM's pre-1986 library, which included thousands of films, but more importantly, a ton of classic cartoons. Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, Popeye, the list goes on. In 1991, he purchased almost all of Hanna-Barbera Productions' catalog, which included the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, the Jetsons, and many more.
Wow, that's crazy.
Basically, Ted now owned the rights to every popular cartoon made in the last 60 years that
That's
wasn't made by Disney. And with that, he started the first ever 24-hour network.
I didn't even know that's how it fucking started. That's a fucking W.
The Cartoon Network did not explode in popularity right away. It was a bunch of reruns of old shows acting as a little nostalgia kick for older folks. This ultimately was a genius strategy because imagine trying to start a 24-hour network with 0 shows that people knew. It would be impossible to get off the ground.
That shit would have
So
flopped
the network started
immediately.
with only old shows and got to work producing originals. Just when you think TV is going to be taken over by all adult animations, we got another renaissance of children's cartoons on Nickelodeon. Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, Rocko's Modern Life, Kablam, Ah Real Monsters, Hey Arnold. Nickelodeon was the go-to place for children's cartoons, even though some of these early cartoons were barely for kids. While Disney
Ren and
was
Stimpy
producing
was
the
not for
perfect
fucking
imagination land where everything is happy and nice, Nickelodeon was bringing totally original animation
Rocko's
styles,
Modern Life
grim
low-key wasn't for
scenery,
kids
and
neither.
taking creative risks.
They was getting some
Cartoon
shit
Network
off in that
slowed
show
down on airing old
that
shows
only
in
adults could
1996,
get.
and they were ready to roll out their originals: Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, Ed, Ed and Ed, Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's safe to say in the 90s, the line between what cartoons are for adults and what cartoons are for children is very blurry. It could be because the censorship that was enforced in the 30s wasn't really challenged for 50 years or so when The Simpsons came out. I'm not saying that the 90s cartoons were edgy, but they were a little darker, more intrepid, more intense, and overall more adult appealing. The 90s in general were a little darker and rebellious towards the 80s, where everything was seen as loud, colorful, and glamorous. Counterculture became cool, grunge music and gangster rap became popular, so cartoons really blended in with the aesthetic of the culture. We are going to be different, so let's be cool and reserved and do exactly the opposite of what the 80s would do. South
Culture
Park,
was created.
1997. The first episode was crass, in-your-face humor.
Ike, you can't come to school with me.
Early South Park was funny as shit, though.
Dildo. Dude, don't call my brother a dildo. What's a dildo?
This show was not for kids, which is funny because it's a bunch of 4th graders. At this point, The Simpsons proved you can make fun of pop culture, make fun of politics, make edgy, rude jokes while entertaining millions of people and creating a 9-figure worth show. South Park is not unique in its use of satirical humor, but it is one of the most effective satires due to its production format.
Satire to the max.
Episodes are not written before the season begins.
Satire to the max.
An episode begins on a Thursday with the creators, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and the show's writers brainstorming ideas for the episode. The script will be written, animated, and voiced for release on Wednesday nights. Just 6 days of work. We work between 100 and 120 hours in a 7-day week to deliver the episodes. This hectic production allows South Park to be in the zeitgeist of pop culture while it is happening. For example,
crazy.
in the season 4 episode Quintuplets 2000, the show nearly does a 1-to-1 recreation of a famous photo of a U.S. Border Patrol raid during the Elian Gonzalez affair, an event that occurred 4 days before the show aired. The season 7 episode, It's Christmas in Canada, references the discovery and capture of Saddam Hussein, which happened 3 days before the episode aired. Season 12's About Last Night revolves around Barack Obama's presidential victory, which happened less than 24 hours before the episode aired.
They already had
On the
that shit in the
surface,
cut.
the show appeals to almost any age group, but the news-like coverage of more serious current events is certainly appealing to an adult audience. South Park has won 5 Primetime Emmy Awards as well as the prestigious Peabody Award, which honors excellence in storytelling that reflects the social issues and the emerging voices of our day. South Park remains one of Comedy Central's highest-rated programs, and in 2021 was renewed through 2027. 2 years after South Park came Family Guy, another soon-to-be
Early
iconic
Family
adult
Guy.
animated
Funny as
series
shit.
focused on a New England family, which was reminiscent of The Simpsons with a moronic father, stay-at-home wife, and of course, the 3 kids. The first episode aired on Fox immediately after Super Bowl 33 to 22 million viewers. Season 1 maintained high viewership, but would dwindle through the 2nd and 3rd seasons. Following the 3rd season's declining viewership, Fox decided to cancel the show in 2002. Hard to imagine a time where Family Guy wasn't totally loved. Maybe it was just too similar to The Simpsons? This wasn't the end of the Griffins. There would be a savior coming to their rescue. The 2000s, a new century. This meant change. Changing
Bro,
back
they
into
ran that shit up
kid-friendly
on Adult Swim.
cartoons again, Nickelodeon started drifting from the grim, dark cartoons to more companionable and kid-friendly with the additions of SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, The Wild Thornberrys, Rocket Power, Jimmy Neutron. They still had Invader Zim, Cat Dog, and Danny Phantom. Disney Channel was even more kid-friendly. Cartoon Network was kind of the place where the cool teenagers indulge, but it was spiraling down pretty fast. The network had a new CEO when the company was merged with Time Warner AOL. New ownership and new leadership will lead to changes. All of their iconic shows like Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, and Courage were getting canceled. They rebranded, launched a few new shows that are beloved today, but weren't necessarily hits at the time. Codename Kid Next Door, Billy and Mandy, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. These shows were a little bit softer compared to previous Cartoon Network originals and were loved by children, but not teenagers and adults. So there was a gap in the market. There wasn't a go-to place where adults could escape into an animated universe and not have to worry about censorship and juvenile humor. Until 2001, with the birth of Adult Swim, the very first animated network designed specifically for adults.
An amazing fucking program block.
The branding was clever. All kids out of the pool, because now it was time for the
That
adults
shit was
to have some fun
clever.
without all the childishness.
That shit was
the shows
clever.
often had a more mature sentiment, coarse language, and sexual innuendos. The
'Cause
Adult
I
Swim
remember them
programming
old-ass
block
commercials,
launched just
too.
2 nights a week, with one of those being just a repeat of the other. Original series would be aired such as Aqua Teen Hunger Force, The Brack Show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, C-Lab 2021, and more. Adult Swim kinda had a cheat code to launch the network. Since Ted Turner purchased the Hanna-Barbera catalog in the 90s, they were able to use classic cartoons such as Scooby-Doo and new shows like Harvey Birdman.
Bro,
This may
that
not
shit
seem like a
was
big deal, but
fucking-
having the rights to a classic cartoon and being able to tell a new story around those 50-year-old characters is a huge advantage to gaining new viewership. Imagine your dad flipping
Yeah,
through
that
the
shit was
channels and
peak.
seeing Yogi Bear on the witness stand. He would be confused but interested to see one of his childhood cartoons be reimagined. Adult Swim could arguably get the credit for introducing Americans to anime, broadcasting popular
Definitely.
shows like Cowboy Bebop and Mobile Suit Gundam. By late 2002, the network was becoming more interested in obtaining the rights to animated series that had been canceled. Again, knowing how hard it is to make new cartoons and get a new audience when you can
That
just
shit was
capture an
genius.
already existing audience. One of the first
And
and
just
more
bring 'em
notable
over
of these
here.
was Futurama, which they
Goated.
obtained the rights to reruns for a reported $10 million. Jim Samples, Cartoon Network's executive VP, said, "Futurama reruns will take our Adult Swim programming to a whole different level." Adult Swim would
Yo,
come
dude,
to the
now
rescue
thinking
from
about
another
it, yo,
show,
the
which
way
would become a pivotal
how
moment
Adult
for
Swim was
both the
made, that shit
network
is
and the
genius.
series. Family Guy.
Bro,
3
we ain't gotta
seasons
make
that
no
had
fucking
previously
originals.
aired
We
on
can
Fox
just
would now
buy a
have
whole
new
bunch of
home
canceled
on
shits.
Adult Swim. The president
That
of
is
Fox
fucking
tried selling
genius.
Family Guy, but nobody wanted it. We ended up giving them to Cartoon Network basically for free.
Wow.
In 2003, it became the block's top-rated program. The
Wow.
difference boosted the viewership of Adult Swim and Cartoon Network as a whole by 239%. The same week Family Guy aired on Adult Swim, Fox released the first 2 seasons on DVD. 400,000 copies within a month were sold. The reruns and DVDs were so successful that Fox ordered 35 new episodes of Family Guy in 2004. Adult Swim officially brought the show back from the dead. With a massive increase in viewership, the Adult Swim block was expanded from 2 to 5 nights a week. Adult cartoons were about to take over.
I ain't gonna lie, that's kind of similar to like the Adventure Time thing. Like Nickelodeon had it and they said, nah, fuck this shit. And then it just blew up on Cartoon Network. Fox said, fuck Family Guy, and that shit just blew the fuck up on Adult Swim. That's crazy.
2005 to 2015
That's
would
crazy.
arguably be the peak of Adult Swim. Futurama and Family Guy were bringing in the consistent new viewers who were slowly and surely getting into the network's originals, such as Venture Bros and Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Man, you gotta check this out.
Oh,
Go to shows.
That's a neat car.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force is fucking out of pocket, yo.
I think I have a straight 6.
Venture Bros, I really didn't find funny like that.
Sexual innuendo is priceless.
Iconic long-running shows like Robot Chicken and
Boondocks.
The Boondocks would be introduced.
I tried.
Sorry, honey, sorry. I just gotta crap like a bastard. I can't wait.
Syndicated classics King of the Hill and American Dad are running.
American Dad is mid as hell.
My do. Yeah. How could you do this to me, Puff Puff?
In 2007, they would expand their programming to 7 nights a week, even branching out of animation with the Tim and Eric Awesome Show, the Eric Andre Show.
Not
Lotus
funny,
Squad.
yeah,
Although its
shows, except for
popularity
Lotus
was at an
Squad. Lotus
all-time
Squad was
high,
funny.
Adult Swim
Them
still
other
felt like
shows
this
were
dark
not funny.
corner of TV that only people with a secret password were allowed to watch. These were shows you escape into when you're alone at night and with all the lights off, not with the whole family in the living room. You built
Memories.
relationships with the characters and became emotionally invested. If you were
Memories.
young, you didn't want your parents to find out what you were watching. Adult Swim gave up-and-coming creators a chance to
Oh, the
display
12
their
ounce
animations
mouse was
to
so
the masses.
fucking
They
trash.
embraced underground hip-hop and lo-fi,
Bro, yes, the music between
which
the
at the time
commercials
had
and
very
shit.
little
Them shits used
representation.
to
They were also
hit.
known for their iconic bumps, which were 5 to 10 second segments after the show and before commercials. Also after the commercials and before the show. These bumps took away an extra commercial or two to provide a nice transition for the viewer.
I
Most
fucking
networks
loved
would
them.
just run another commercial for the bag. They were designed to be relaxing, usually accompanied with a creative or funny visual and calm music. The black
loved
screen
them.
with white text became the most iconic bump style. In 2021, people were creating their own Adult Swim bumps on TikTok, and it was probably the best trend I've ever seen on that app.
Yeah, I've
Adult
seen some
Swim
of 'em.
wasn't this roaring financial beast like Nickelodeon or Disney Channel or even its host Cartoon Network, but they were creating culture and satisfying a market that
Creating
was so
fucking
desperately
culture.
in need of something beyond Family Guy and The
Literally.
Simpsons. Cartoon Network had a second boom in the 2010s with Adventure Time, Regular Show, and The Amazing World of
Goated.
Gumball, while Disney and Nick were hanging on for dear life. However, Adult Swim would get blessed with the introduction
fumbled
of Rick
that
and
bag
Morty
with
in
Adventure Time, though.
2013. Rick and Morty follows Rick Sanchez, a cynical mad scientist, and his timid grandson Morty. These two split their time between a complicated home life and interdimensional space travel. There aren't enough words to explain the imaginative and insane plot lines in this show.
They're milking
It's
the
been
shit out of
memed
Rick and Morty
heavily,
now,
and
though.
the mainstream audience definitely makes it seem a bit cringe, but it's a really great show even still to this day. Throughout its 5 seasons, Rick and Morty has measured an average viewership of 1.67 million viewers, which in the modern streaming era is excellent. Its influence around the world is immense, with multiple video games, tabletop games, memes, and music. But as you know, the way most of these videos end, the streaming era. The downfall of television and birth of social media leads to the rapid dwindling relevance of these networks. Half of the people watching this video don't have cable anymore or don't care to watch it. The others won't be purchasing HBO Max or any other streaming services to watch new or even old classic cartoons. Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, Nick, they're doing fine. Times are different now. There are too many streaming services and too many social media platforms for cartoons or networks to have much cultural impact. Children's animations are definitely more financially successful and popular. Watching them later on in life is a heavy dose of innocence and youthfulness, but the longevity and day-to-day value that adult cartoons bring is unmatched. No matter where you decide to watch them, whether they are old or new, adult cartoons are and always will be the superior animations.
Basically.
Okay. Watch where you look, you get blocked from the wrist. When I step out, they always want pics. I got no time to go strip out a bitch. Mary call me flowers for the drip. I got a bitch from the mall, she won't fuck with me. Hit that hoe once time, she thinking she stuck with me. Always be heading cause I'm living luxury. Walking the mall and I spend me 100 piece. Yeah, yeah.